as you, and the impact to what you're able to do in the services that you offer.
So that's a good transition to talk a little bit about how do you approach the idea of realistic goal setting in a situation like we're in, and identifying like how can you identify what's appropriate to plan for, what's appropriate to be asking for, what kinds of asks might be more appropriate than others. Anyone want to chime in and give some thoughts about how you've been approaching that thus far?
I mean, I can chime in potentially on the ask, not so much the goal. Hoping somebody else can chime in on that. But you know, again, from the past 2 weeks, I've learned that, you know, this ask has potentially got to be more tangible than ever. Potentially, we're not going to get our very high, you know, bids on live auctions and silent auctions per se, and high donations. But what we can do is, you know, is we can all try and relate. So knowing that my $100 is going towards, you know, 100 jars of, you know, peanut butter, I can relate to that. You know, so that in my opinion, that ask has to be as tangible as possible. Yeah.
I think that I'll talk a little bit about the goals, but I also want to address one of the questions, which was related to back to where we were, where how do donors want to be approached, best practices. And I actually said I answered it without answering it, so I'm just learning the technology. So there's that vulnerability, is learning. We're all in this together. To answer that question, how do donors want to be approached? They want to be approached as the same way that they have been approached. How do you talk to your donors today? If you're emailing them, then you should be emailing them. If you're calling them, or if you're having coffee with them, your closest held donors, reach out to them, pick up the phone, do a Zoom, you know, a virtual coffee with them. I think it's just really important to stay the course. And this is where, again, all of our best practices come into play in these tougher times. As far as setting goals, this is new. I think that we need to figure out, I think we need to be realistic with our goals. We need to be flexible. I think that what we're starting to see is that when people are pivoting from an in-person event to a virtual event, that they are actually meeting or exceeding their goals in a big percentage of the time. That's not going to be for everybody, but I think that we just need to be a little flexible. I'll tell you what you'll get if you go quiet, which is nothing. So talking appropriately and being out there, and again, being transparent and vulnerable, is going to get you further ahead than where you were without talking. And it's going to, when things get better, and they will get better, that link to communication hasn't been broken. You've been continuing that with them the whole time.
Debby or Hilary, have anything you want to add to that before we move on?
You know, with the goals, I think you just throw away anything extraneous. What is it that you need to do during this time? Who are you serving? What's the impact? And how best to accomplish that? So what were your fundraising activities through this time? Was it an in-place event? That means the pivot to the virtual event. Do you typically raise through some kind of a mailing or email ask? And I see a question in here that says, how do you get beyond the flood of COVID emails? Don't put COVID in the title. Put down what the impact and what's going on with you, you know, to your audience who cares about you and is engaged. And, you know, and I'm going to go back to schools. It's not the only fundraisers we're doing, but those are the ones I'm seeing right now with the virtual stuff, because this is their season. You know, band uniforms or sports uniforms or music lessons for the kids, or sustaining the teachers as they're teaching remotely. All of that is super, you know, important. And, you know, we'll hopefully all be back together way before the fall, but by the fall. So, you know, people are still engaged with life is going on, and when it resumes, whatever the new normal will look like, you know, we've still got to be there with the services that we offer. I saw a domestic violence shelter, and this is a really bad time when you're locked in the house and maybe you've lost a job, and there's some alcohol abuse going on, and we've got some people in serious danger. And so those types of causes really need to focus on what do we need to take care of our, you know, the, what's the word I'm looking for? The group that we serve.
Yeah, so,
sorry,
go ahead, Hilary.
Well, I was just going to kind of piggyback on what Jim said earlier about the reach outs and, you know, making sure, I mean, there should be an acknowledgement, I think, of what's going on right now, right? And I think that if you can kind of set that tone in advance to say, hey, we acknowledge that all of this is happening. It's happening to all of us. And then go in more for the ask and what Debbie was saying about, you know, the problem and how it's impacting the organization. Because, you know, I think the gifting piece of the donor's mindset is, you know, there's empathy and there's compassion there. And so tapping into that initially to get a hold of them, I think can help sort of, you know, set the tone initially. And then, you know, from there, it's like, yeah, what's the comfort level in terms of how much? But at least you're kind of, I think that upfront acknowledgement is really important.
Yeah.
So there's a question in the box here. I think we've addressed it a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about the fact that on top of the sort of safety issues, there's also economic issues related to being in a recession, either currently or definitely on our way there. So can we talk a little bit about how you might address that with either potential donors or sponsors that you're asking to participate?
I don't want to beat the horse here, but it's transparency. I think we've, as the country, we've gone through recessions, nonprofit funding, charitable, in some cases, charitable fundraising will go down. I think it's just having that conversation. Maybe, you know, that donor can't do as much right now, but the mission is still here, and we appreciate everything that you're doing for us. If you don't, they want you to ask. So just continue to have that conversation and just be clear about and sensitive about what those expectations are. You could get really deep into stats, you know, and certain income levels are going to be, you know, giving more and certain are less, and you'd be surprised at how that works. Actually, the people that are hurting the most are, you know, all, you know, really making small contributions that add up to a lot. So it just all depends, but this is not the first recession that we've been through. This is maybe one that's a little bit more severe than where we've been before, but we all, you know, it is recoverable, and it's just important to communicate.
Thank you. So anyone have anything they want to add to that before I move on to our next topic? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what does it actually mean to produce a virtual event in terms of tools and production, and what does this actually physically look like, and how you would potentially put together a plan for how you might put something out into the world. Hilary, do you want to start as a person who's doing a lot of this related to production right now?
Yeah, I can speak to the production side for sure. You know, the customers that we work with on the corporate side for the virtual experience, you know, there tends to be a lot of high-end production that goes into that. And what we work with on the nonprofits is kind of how do we translate that, especially in the virtual world, and get as much of that high quality for the donors to really feel like they're part of the experience, and doing it in such a way that isn't there isn't a huge cost implication to it, right? And so there are some tools out there that can be achieved. I know, like on our side, we use a virtual switcher, which really helps kind of that experience of transitioning between, if you've got someone who is sort of, like speaking to the event and kind of the facilitator along the way. And then if you've got some videos, like that video content, I was actually, as everyone was talking, I was trying to also answer a question in the queue, which is really, I'm challenged with that, but
it is hard
about this. And where my mind went immediately is like, how do you prioritize what elements should get the most emphasis when you have such little resources? And truly, the videos are the most impactful. So even if they're videos you've used before, it's not like you have to start a whole new thing now and get those produced. And playing those and having a nice, working with a partner to on that workflow of like the production flow and still maintaining a really rich experience that way. I mean, for example, if you think about an auction, right? That in-person experience, it's planned out to the T, right? You've got, from everything from when the guests walk into the building, what music are they hearing? What's the vibe? What does it look like? You can translate the same, if you can process it the same way with the virtual experience, everything from clicking on that link, logging into the virtual experience, what's going on. Even in a Zoom experience, you could literally have someone with a phone or something playing some music so that as everyone's kind of logging in and they're hearing music, kind of thinking of it in the same creative way. There's just so many different things that you can implement. And again, I think playing the videos and getting the heartstrings the same way you would in the in-person experience pulled, I think that is so critical, because that's really the biggest engagement that people have when they're in that virtual setting. I'm going to stop talking, but I can keep on. I'll let someone else jump in. I get really excited about this stuff.
No, that was great. Jim, Jack, Debbie, anyone, Dana, have anything else you want to add to that?
I totally agree. Everything that was just said, I'm 100% on board. I think videos now are going to be huge because they can potentially be so powerful. And, I mentioned the other day that we're all on our smartphone way more than we need to be right now because we're trying to, combat boredom. But however that is pushed onto your smartphone, I'm sure we'll come on to, but the videos I think are going to be huge. So if we can be creative as possible with that communication, brilliant.
Well, and when you're talking virtual events, it could be as simple as moving an auction just totally online. It could be doing a series of appeals that you push out through social media and drive to your online donation button, wherever that is. Or it could be taking your in-person event and giving it some elements that make it feel a little bit like an event where somebody, if you're not yet at that stage where nobody can be together, which I think about 30 of the states around the United States are that way. And I know in other countries, we're all at different stages, but you can do a production where you have someone on stage, an MC on stage, doing the appeal, doing some of the live auction, doing some of the activities that you might do at an in-person event. It's what are you trying to accomplish and the medium that you have, and not recommending that you go scurry out and buy something. What do you already have in place and who are the partners? With ILEA, we have so many people. We have video people, we have event planners, we have fundraising consultants, we have so much. And we're all sitting around right now. And wouldn't it be nice to still be able to do some work and take our talents and spend them and help those of you that are looking for that answer of what can you do right now. We all need work, we all need some income, so we just have to get creative about that method of what we're doing. If it's a text to give campaign, again, there's got to be some messaging. We've seen some really powerful stuff done where somebody's just been on a cell phone or been on a Facebook Live. It's low production. I prefer something a little bit more professional, but the fact is people are doing something. and they're reaching out sincerely, and that connects with people, and that's what you need right now.
Yeah, and I think
So a
people
question.
forgive us for our mistakes too, because we're new at this.
Yeah.
I love your idea, Hilary, of thinking it through like the whole show flow. Like I hadn't even gotten that far in my brain. I think we're going to talk about this a little later, Jodi, but you know, one of the things that we've been doing is thinking really creatively, because we already have sponsors engaged for something that we postponed that might actually need to go to virtual and not be live. And so those, like all of those incredible sponsor activations we normally do live, those are also transferable into that show. Jodi, there was also a question in the chat box about how you deal with your you know, top bidders or donors that are not tech savvy, which I'll raise my hand. I'm getting more tech savvy every day now, but I'm still not all the way there. And one thing, another top charity auction, and hopefully they're fine with me sharing because we're all about sharing and collaborating, but they assign board buddies to each of their top donors to kind of be on the line with them and walk them through and help them throughout. And I thought that that was a really great solution for people who might be a little more challenged the first time around.
And to just go to transition into, there was other questions about older demographics. So don't count them out. I will say, just from personal experience, my parents are 76 years old. They're doing book club. They're going to church. They're, you know, my dad's checking in with, you know, his office buddies, you know, because, you know, so I've spent a few hours on the phone about don't press that button, but you know, they can be educated and you know, and pick up the phone and talk them through it. So I just think that we're, you know, the reality is that that's how we're connecting right now, and I think that the older generations can be there as well.
So a question that has come up in the box here that I think would be interesting to talk about is an anonymous poster asked, how long should a virtual event last? What's an appropriate amount of time to plan for someone to be involved in a virtual event like this?
Well, again, I think it's what type of an event. You know, since we do auctions, I'm going to use auctions for an example. What we have seen so far in the last few weeks is a huge shift from the full production, stage, people, music, you know, you could social distancing and people cheering, to now that we're doing this from our homes. And I just went blank. Somebody take it. It'll come. Oh, I know. Oh God, I lost it.
Hilary, you probably have the best answer, but I mean, what I've been hearing is, you know, anywhere from, you know, about 20 minutes is about, you know, 20 to 30 minutes is about the right time for these. But what's your opinion?
Yeah, no, you nailed it. I mean, you think about it, like if you're, I mean, there's different experiences, right? It's like for the virtual events that are trainings or that, you know, really session content heavy, people are going to be engaged with that for longer periods of time. But for something like this, when you're really just trying to get their attention, you want to get them convinced, they're ready to, you know, push the donate button. We all know, I mean, if you've got the right video and the right message and the right, you know, delivery of that, it doesn't take long to get that. And, you know, we're not in a situation where people are sitting around dining and drinking and, you know, all the things that would kind of carry it on throughout the evening, right? They're literally sitting at their computer, and sure, I mean, you can encourage them to maybe pour a glass of wine ahead of time, but realistically, people are not going to sit at their computers much longer than that. So I love that you said that, Jim, because that's exactly what we've seen and what we've been talking about with people, is not to try to go too much over that, because you're going to lose it.
He picked up on my brain stage.
I say that now, and then I get concerned that when we go back to in-person events, that they're going to have those same expectations, that we're going to be able to do it in 20 minutes, and they forget about all the chit chat and all the other social part that has to go there. So.
I don't know. Speaking for myself, once we can all get back together again, I'm never going home.
Well, and that's where I was going when I lost my mind. You know, with all the video tools, with whether it's Zoom or whether it's YouTube or Facebook, you can see how many watchers you have and you can track the peak. And you want to get the money in the first 20 to 30 minutes, because after that, they're gone. There'll be people who will hang on there. But you really want that first. You want to get down to business, and then portions of the auction might run another 2 or 3 days beyond. Leave the ask button open, because when you post that video and it lives on Facebook or YouTube, in particular YouTube, what we're seeing are massive views. Now, whether that's other organizations trying to figure out what to do at this point, I don't know, or whether that's other eyeballs on your cause that you didn't have before, you have an opportunity, again, with that heartfelt message, to engage and maybe start a new donor to, become a part of your organization. So,
absolutely.
yeah. So Jack, what are you guys seeing? Because you operate in other countries too.
Yeah, we're global. And one thing I just wanted to add as well, I mean, not knowing the full extent of people that are listening to this and their situations, because one thing that I'm always trying to, keep mindful of is everybody's going to be in a unique situation specific to their organization. Some people might not be able to do like the virtual online piece. And I've thought, and there's nothing wrong with this. It may be as simple as your CEO or your ambassador or, your influencer just speaking from their home. Again, going back to what I said earlier about it being relatable. Everybody's at home. To have your CEO or someone speak from their house, and that message is, broadcasted throughout, various platforms. But for me, after talking to a lot of people, that again is relatable and quite powerful. So I just wanted to highlight that, knowing that, and maybe that there's people listening to this that might not be in a position to hold the virtual fancy, piece. And, there's going to be smaller organizations that are struggling for ideas as well.
Yeah, and that's a great point. One of the things that we're thinking about doing is maybe leading up to an online auction or a big event, having a series of meetups. So you can do a virtual meetup with a winemaker or, a beneficiary, and learn more about their organization. And then there's the main event, which is much shorter. So normally that was all part of, a 5-hour day into the evening experience. Now we're pacing it out over time and engaging with people in different ways.
And embrace the imperfection. It's not going to be perfect.
There's a number of questions in the tool, the question and answer box, that I'm curious to hear all of your thoughts on, is around fully live. If you're going virtual, do you pre-record everything and roll that way? Do you do some hybrid of part live, part pre-recorded? Talk a little bit about what you would recommend in terms of how you might format that.
Well, and Hilary, and I think you're probably, you have the most experience with this, but first of all, there's been a lot of questions and a lot of conversation about what is a virtual event. I think when we're talking about a virtual event, it's a genre of events. As Jack said, everybody's going to be unique, and maybe that virtual experience is just that email from the CEO asking for a donation, or excuse me, the video from the CEO that normally gets a letter. So virtual event does not have to, bells and whistles, and every event is not created equal. In-person event is not created equal. Every virtual event is not the same thing.
Cookie cutter, right?
Cookie cutter. So, I think everybody is going to be different, but I will say a very, if you know your history of fundraising, and maybe because I'm the elder statesperson in the room that I experienced them, go back, YouTube, MDA telethon. These were effective fundraising methods that happened in the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s. And it was produced in a studio, but you could actually produce that pretty much, anywhere now. Those, that message that worked, people aren't going to be calling. You don't need a phone bank now because everybody's going to donate online. But I think that is probably the best homework assignment for people, is to look at what they were doing and what were the elements that were included in there. There was some fun, there was some entertainment, there was an ask, there were all of those kinds of things. But that's, you know, the Muscular Dystrophy Association telethon, Jerry Lewis telethon, all of those keywords in YouTube, and you'll see what I'm saying. So sorry, Hilary, go ahead.
I honestly, my recommendation, I mean, first, what I was saying earlier about the show flow and really thinking through, you know, kind of to what Jim was saying, every event is unique. You know your events, you know your donors, you know, you've got to take the time to really strategize first and think through what that experience, what you want it to be. And as you start doing that, you're going to see opportunities to do some pre-recorded content or to keep some of it live. Now, standard or industry-wide, live is better. It is more effective, period, end of story. So if you can make it live, as much of it as possible, you're going to get more reactions, you're going to get more of a response, you're going to get more engagement. It's just, I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. But again, to Jim's point, like that isn't going to work for everybody. So, you know, you need to think that through and decide. But if you're going through that process, I would encourage you to think what aspects of it could you make live? Maybe not the whole thing, but maybe your MC is that one live experience, right? You at least have someone who's facilitating the whole thing and sort of kicking things off, but then maybe there's video content that gets played after that. Yeah, I mean, that's my recommendation, my thinking on it.
And we've seen a shift over from when this first all started and, you know, the orders for small groups only so that the in-person galas were canceling, down to now most of us are stay at home so that big production can't happen. So I've seen a dad in front of a camera, you know, he did the auction items in front of the camera, and he did his fund to need, and they did well. They did about 80% of their goal. Those that have somebody with a little bit more professional experience, whether it's an auctioneer or an MC that actually understands the cause and how to ask, tend to do a bit better. We're still seeing people exceed their goals, but they're doing it in front of a camera at home with people on some kind of a platform, wherever they're driving them to give. And the big thing is work with the person who's going to stream this on how to say things, because it isn't good enough to say, well, last year this package brought 20,000, can I get 4? Or you were about $100,000 down on our auction. If anybody's got 50,000 sitting around, what can, you know, now would be a good time to give. Now, I'm not criticizing. I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean that this person felt passionate about his school, got online, did the job, but a little bit of coaching on how to frame what the impact of that money would have been a little bit more powerful than, well, we're just down. So, you know, we've said it over and over again, it's about the ask. It's about why it's important. It doesn't really matter how you get the message out there.
And I think that a good add-on here, and a question that was asked online is, you know, we were talking about the amount of time and how we're asking. Mm-hmm. Can we compel a donor in 30 minutes? The standard rules of fundraising still apply. You need to work with your donors. You need to go reach out to them, and you need to get those momentum donors. I have how I put it together is through the 5 Ps. And which one of them is prepare and pursue, you know, prospect. You need to have those people, you need to do a certain amount of work in advance. You know, anywhere from, you know, and a lot of these are going to be paddle raises or fund to needs. 30 to 50% of your funding is going to be raised in advance. So you're going to have those people that are going to motivate those other people. And when they see somebody donating $5,000 and they're like, what, where did that come from? I have no idea. That might motivate them to do, well, if they could do 5,000, I could do 50, I could do 25. So standard, none of this changes. Virtual is just a new way of fundraising. And I think that that's what people are getting a little caught up on, is that they're, you know, it's all new and we've never done this before. We've done this before. We've talked to donors before. We've built relationships. We've told stories before. It's just a new medium. And thank God we have this medium. So
Jim, something you said to me when,
Oh, I'm sorry.
nope, that's okay. Jim, in a conversation you and I were having, something you said to me was, this is really just an opportunity for us to amplify some trends that we were already seeing in fundraising around the success of things like paddle raises and fund a need. Can you talk a little bit about how you might translate those into a virtual environment and what kind of tools you suggest using in those cases?
Yeah, so I'll let the experts talk about the tools that can be used, because there's many, and it's, again, everything is different. I think that the important thing, again, everybody is going to be in a unique situation, but we were seeing more and more money being raised through funded needs and paddle raises than through live auctions. There is still an audience, Dana. There's still an audience for auctions, and you're gonna find them, and that, you know, that makes sense for your group. But where right now I would focus, if an auction works for your group and you can do it effectively in a quick way, do it. But really, where people were moving anyway and the trend was there were with those funded needs and those paddle raises. So this is just an amplification of what that trend was already going. I don't think live auctions are going to go anywhere. I think for the right audience, live auctions are still, and I work for a lot of organizations, several organizations where live auctions were effective. You know, but not every organization is going to be going to have that. And it's a little challenge right now in the, you know, what are the right auction items? When are they going to expire? You know, making sure you get the extensions, and, you know, people, you know, are you going to really give away a trip to, you know, I'm sorry, but, you know, you can't auction off a trip to Italy right now. I mean, that is not going to be effective. But in 3 years, you know, it might be. So you just, but fund a need and the straight philanthropic ask is really where it's been.
So if you're an organization that you had a live event and you're in that cancellation window, who are your partners that you can pivot and reuse? You need a little video production. Did you have a videographer that was part of your event? Did you have a caterer that you know you have to pay? Or you know, people bought tickets. So a lot of organizations are saying, can we count that as a donation? You'll get a straight donation for that ticket. But if that ticket bought dinner, can that caterer then prepare a meal that people could come, you know, we are being allowed to go out and pick up a takeout dinner. So, you know, can we use that partner for that? If you have sponsors, and we're going to take it into the quote unquote virtual realm, what are they going to need coming out of this crisis that we can help them with, as their sponsor dollars are helping us pivot and also accomplish our mission? So I think that's probably universal with anybody. The one thing I would say with going virtual, be a little careful if you're going to include your raffle or you're going to include music, that you are obeying whatever laws and licensing, because I'd hate to see you get
Same
into
for
trouble.
raffles. Same for raffles.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions in the Q&A here around actual suggestions for tools, both in terms of streaming and what integrates with each other from a fundraising and streaming perspective. So Jack and Debbie and Hilary specifically, can you guys talk a little bit about tools that you're finding are successful, what you can't do suggest that integrates together, suggestions you might have for people to be able to actually implement?
Jack, I've been shooting my mouth off. It's your turn.
I like listening to you, Debbie.
We all like listening to you, Jack. Your accent's pretty excellent.
No, as for tools, and you know, to be totally transparent, we're also as an organisation are fairly new to this as well. You know, let's not forget that. So we're actually currently, as we speak today, going through the motions of kind of integration and how we can best look at these virtual pieces. You know, yes, we are a fundraising tech platform, and we specialise in, you know, auctions and donations and, you know, that consultancy piece. But this is, you know, this is new to us too. You know, I'm not getting away from the fact that we're going to be experts in this straight away. So whilst we have the tool, we're still looking at the integration. So what that looks like just yet, again, to be transparent, is I'm not sure.
I can tell you what I've seen people using. We're doing the same thing, Jack. We're looking at, what can we do to make this easier? Plus, we think that the face of fundraising will never go back to just in room only. We think that there'll be a certain portion when we come out of this that people will learn that streaming engages people outside the room and in giving outside the room. I don't think our in-person events go away. But I've seen YouTube. I've seen Vimeo embedded in YouTube. I've seen Facebook Live. The danger in just Facebook is not everybody has a Facebook account. But this is where if you had a videographer involved in your event, or you're a professional in the ILEA industry, where you can reach out to nonprofits and say, how can I help? Because they're the professionals. We're software, or we're consultants. Hilary's got more in the production range. So, what have you got to add, Hilary?
Yeah, and it's a great question. This is being asked everywhere for all events. And it is a challenge. Obviously something as simple as Zoom is perfectly acceptable depending on your event. I keep going back to what Jim said about it's just every event is so unique. So it really depends once you've established your goals and how big your audience is. But we actually, my team, so we offer everything from integrating something like Zoom experience into a platform. It could be any web conferencing tool. There's other ones out there, Hi5, WebEx, any one of those. And all the way up through an actual live stream experience. And so that is something where you would want to partner with a vendor like us, like Evia, where they can actually provision a live stream for you. And there's tools that we use that a presenter or an MC or whoever's going to be speaking on the other end can literally do it from their computer or their iPhone or their regular phone, whatever, using a web conferencing tool, and it connects into this switcher tool that we have, and it allows the stream to be an experience for everyone else. So all the attendees, it feels like a nice high quality video experience. So it removes all the little functions that you see as we're watching this Zoom experience. It's just a nice high quality feed coming through. There's definitely the other platforms out there like Vimeo and YouTube. We use those for some of our events. But again, I would recommend, if you're gonna do a live experience, to reach out to your production vendors, AV teams, production. They don't have to specialize in virtual events like we do to have some of these answers for you. And if they're partners of yours from before, I promise you, they're gonna be willing to give you some answers and give you some guidance. So it's all about that collaboration and leaning on your partners for some of that. And it just, you really need to understand what your goals are. And then the technology is just, just recommend whatever technology is best to achieve the goal.
I see a question sitting here that, wanting us to address the clients, the difference between live and virtual events and some of the topics you address. But the final statement caught my eye. What right off the bat to ease some potential reservations about virtual events? What's the risk? What are you going to lose by trying?
Right.
Exactly.
There is a risk not doing anything. Nothing's coming in. So.
And sorry,
okay.
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
Well, I would also just add, I mean, speaking from myself, we've all been sort of stuck in our homes for quite a long time now. And I've been on more virtual happy hours in the last 2 weeks than I've been on in my normal happy hours in 3 months. And so I think there is something to be said for the fact that people are actually looking for opportunities to engage with organizations, with organizations they feel passionate about. And if you can provide them with even a short amount of time where they can engage with something that they are already connected to and want to support, I think you'll find that people actually want to participate in these. And I've seen celebrities doing home concerts, and like people are watching them in the thousands. I think there's tons of ways that we can do this that people will actually like really be excited about and engaged with if we just be creative a little bit.
Well, and I think that the beauty of the creativity in the virtual space is that when I didn't really know what the cost would be. I mean, I know what the cost of an in-person event are, and they're not cheap in a lot of cases. Virtual, actually, when I started to talk to a couple people that were producing virtual events, there wasn't really sticker shock. So, you know, to Hilary's point, to pay to have a professionally produced with a switcher and just that experience, and it's, you know, 20 to 30 minutes, people are going to really appreciate it. And you wouldn't go to your ballroom and to ask, you know, if you're trying to raise, you know, $1 million, which, you know, some organizations, you know, there's events out there obviously that are, you're not going to discount your investment in the production value there. So I wouldn't discount it here. That's not to say that some other things don't work and some things are effective, but if you're really going for that biggest thing and that, you know, that virtual gala, then, you know, make sure that you're investing and partnering with your, you know, your production companies.
I'm sure Jack.
And I would even say not just your production companies, like really thinking out, like, who would you normally be working with on this event? There's a number of questions in the boxes around how do you engage your caterer? Ask them, reach out to them. I bet they have ideas about things that they've been contemplating doing. I've seen great restaurants and caterers doing really outside of the box things. They might have ideas for you. Jim mentioned seeing if you could figure out ways to have items delivered to people via automobile sponsors. Like, reach out to the vendors that you normally work with and engage them in the process of thinking creatively about how you might execute something. I think a lot of them are totally game for thinking outside the box if you get everybody together, and I bet you'd be surprised some of the cool stuff that might come out of that.
Yeah.
Well, and there was a question earlier about integration of sponsors, and, you know, what do we do with the sponsors that are signed on? To Jodi's point, have that conversation, because I do believe there are creative things that can happen. And an automobile sponsor that might have had a car in the ballroom that, you know, maybe a few people would look at, if they're actually delivering food to people's houses and that's being documented, that's great. That's more than, you know, sponsorship value than they were going to get in the ballroom. So
yeah,
Jack, what were you going to say?
They could do an ad off of that, or you know, a message about why they care. We've seen, and I'm sure Jack has seen this too, that we've had, you know, we have people with events scheduled that the order came down 24 hours before their event, and some of these groups pivoted in that amount of time with their partners and went live with a virtual event the next day. Some of them had 3 days. So if you've got 3 weeks, you're golden.
Yeah, now more than ever, potentially time is on your side. Like,
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just want to go back to Jodi's point, just super quickly, just to kind of, again, settle the seas a little bit and try not to, you know, create panic, that this is still in its infancy. This is still really early on. So I like Jodi's point about kind of just calling your partners, calling your vendors, and just strategizing with them, bounce ideas off. We might not necessarily have the answers, but together we you know, 2 brains are better than 1 type thing.
So I just want to like interject here just really quickly. We're technically right at the end of our time that we were slated for. So I just want to mention, if anybody needs to jump off, we thank you tremendously for joining us. I know that there's a number of questions in the Q&A box that we have not yet gotten to. So I know that the panelists are all willing to hang a little bit longer. If you are interested, we will continue to answer some questions. But if you do need to go, we totally understand, and thank you for joining us. I also just want to mention that we will do our best to go back to any questions that are in the question and answer box that we didn't get to, and try to, if we don't get to them live, we will try to get you answers written. And then I did post this in the chat box, but please know that our contact information, Dana, do you want to maybe put that up for anybody that's needing to jump off here quickly in case anybody wants to screenshot it? We're going to put contact information up for all of the panelists today. Please screenshot this if you are needing to reach out to anybody. All of their contact information is on the screen now. Reach out to them directly, especially if you have questions about platforms and tools. I know that any of them would be super happy to talk to you around specifics related to any events that you might have coming up for your business. And I would also just echo something Hilary said and reach out to audio production vendors that you might already work with in your cities. I know many of them have taken steps already to be able to accommodate the need for these types of events. And I'm sure any of them would be super happy to provide you some direction and advice on how you might be able to position your event in the coming days. So if you do need to jump off, we thank you, but otherwise we are going to stick around for just a bit here and keep answering a few questions. So
one of the Jodi, can I just, one of the things that we were kind of leaning towards was this, what is, what's the future? What is, what does this mean? So what I think is that this exercise, this work that we're doing now is going to pay dividends in the future. We're going to, what I anticipate seeing is the hybrid event. I compared it to years ago, when we were designing websites, we were always designing for the desktop, and then this thing called mobile decided to come, came out, and then we had to just, design for mobile in order to make it seen, and then now everything is, designed for mobile first. So I think that there are going to be things in the future that we're going to need to make sure we design for virtual, but there's not going to be a reason now that once we get comfortable with this and we see the success of it, there's not going to be a reason to pull back. What it's going to do is just going to add to our audience. So if somebody, you're missing an audience when you're only, if you're paying $250 for a gala ticket, there's a lot of people that obviously can't afford that, but they can stream the content on the video and make a donation so they can participate. And so I don't think that we're, probably going to go back anytime soon. So the good news is that all of this work that we're doing is going to continue to pay off in the future.
I completely agree, especially as people are now, like, everyone that I know knows how to use Zoom now. So lots of people are going to be much more comfortable using these platforms now.
Well, and
does anybody want to chat?
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Really
Sorry.
Quick too. I just,
yes, please.
Something worth, I think, mentioning is that I think you said it earlier, actually, Jodi, is you have a captive audience right now. I mean, what else are people doing? Like, I'm trying to find every excuse to, like, get away from my family for a few minutes. And so it's really, if you think about the long-term strategy for all of this, think about 6 months from now or next year's event and how many people you can bring into the fold right now that maybe they don't donate a lot right now, but you've got them, like, you're bringing them in and you have them for the future. So, a lot of times that's what our goals are with our customers, is to help build that in-person experience. That's the end goal. And this is a great way to bring people into that conversation.
Yeah, and I think we have to remember that it doesn't have to be 10 signature donors that are donating huge amounts of money. Lots of people giving smaller amounts or pledging a small amount now, and with pledging continuing payments over time, that can add up to be a significant contribution to your organization. And if nothing else, it might be the amount that you need to get you through this moment and be able to continue to provide the services in the moment. And so I think being realistic about what that average person sitting at home might be able to contribute and how that stacking together can be really impactful.
I listened to a Bloomerang webinar this last week, and Sean Trainer, I think, was the speaker, and I think out of Australia. But he had some actual templates on how to ask during a crisis that I thought were brilliant. So I would recommend you check that out. The language, again, we know money's tight, we know this, we know that. But, for some of us, fundraising is going to be down for our organization. Some of us, it's going to hold steady, and some of us, because again, those right on the front line of the COVID-19 epidemic that, you know, we may do very well with those types of fundraising because people want to help those that are, you know, at most risk right now. But again, don't put in the donor's mind what they're willing to do. Put the need out there. Do that the, you know, the best way that you can, and don't do it one time. It's a conversation. And if you do find yourself in that situation where you really feel like your organization can't ask right now, this is a good time for donor care, of reaching out and having those conversations and making sure people are okay. Because again, some of your donors might be seniors and might not be. I would not put my mom online. I'll tell you that, Jim. That is not going to happen. Because she would buy everything. She believes everything. Because if it's online, it's true.
Great, so.
But, you know, again, it's what conversations can we have? What genuine care? Because I promise you they'll remember that as we come out the other side. I promise you they will.
Okay, I completely agree. So just to wrap up, a question that's been in the Q&A box a little bit here is, what advice do you have? There's a general comments in here that fundraising for those in healthcare or maybe those in some really obvious industries are maybe more, it's easier to make the case for why you would fundraise for those in the moment. What advice do you have to organizations that might not be considered so like frontline in this to be able to position themselves strategically as a way to reach out to their donors now?
I think it's going to go back to everybody's going to be unique. But I had an example yesterday of somebody reached out to me and they're having a festival, a cultural festival, and it's going to happen in August. And is it going to happen in August? Is it not going to happen in August? And you know, they're fundraising right now. They're raising money for sponsorship right now. And is it appropriate? So we had a conversation and we decided that the best message is that this particular culture, you know, this is a time to come together as a community and that we need to support each other. And then let's engage online, social media wise during this period of time. And that we've always worked, you know, we've come through as a culture so many other things, and we're going to come through this. Hopefully we're going to meet all together in August, but it's that integration of the message. It's every organization is going to have it's going to, and I'm sorry, you know, it seems like we're saying everything is going to be unique, you know, but there are some, you know, so a lot of that is true, but it's just being really thoughtful and how to integrate that message into what you're saying, into what you're doing, and then you know, go from there. Be aware of your audience. The people that have been giving to you still want to give to you. They really care about you, and they care so much that they're willing to share it with their friends too. So make sure that you're making it shareable so that they can bring in that new people. And again, they want to hear from you, and they want to share your message.
Yeah, and I think when we see times of crisis like we've seen here in Sonoma County during the fires and whatnot, the organizations that are on the front line get so much funding right out of the gate that all of the others actually are impacted even more so. They need funding more than ever before. So like Jim is saying, you know, what is your unique story that you can share about how your organization is helping, and frame it in a different way? And are you out there helping those that have been impacted? And, you know, whether you're in the arts, you know, what is your arts doing to help people who have been traumatized through this process or something like that? Like, how do you weave what's happened to everyone into your story?
What services?
Debbie,
okay, go ahead.
No, I was there's a number of questions directed to you here about a resource that you maybe mentioned when you were speaking a little bit ago around how to make an ask during a crisis, or a workshop that you were listening to. Can you restate what that was?
It was Bloomerang, and they've got 3 webinars on COVID-19, and the one in particular had Sean, S-E-A-N, Triner, T-R-I-N-E-R. He did an awesome job with some facts and figures on what happens if you don't fundraise and ways to ask. And he's got some templates that he put up that you could just pretty much take the wording and dump your own in there. You know, I got time on my hands, and yeah, I'm on the phone, but my evenings and weekends have been watching a lot of webinars because, like we've all said, we don't all have the answers. It is an evolving landscape, and we're trying to figure it out too.
Okay, so in the essence of time, there's a lot of questions in here around specific tools, and I may circle back to the panelists here and see if we could potentially come up with some tool lists that we might be able to compile and make available as part of this when they post the webinar tomorrow, as opposed to spending a lot of time here talking about them. Maybe we can identify a list of some options that we could maybe make available. And again, I would just recommend, these are some great experts. If you want advice or suggestions about the tools that they specifically represent, I definitely encourage you to reach out to them directly. To maybe wrap up today, could each of you just give a little bit of a maybe rundown example of an event that you've seen either doing this really well, or maybe something that you saw that wasn't done particularly well that you might have done differently? There's been a lot of questions for specific examples. So something that you've seen done well that you might offer as a suggestion.
I'll jump in. We haven't done this yet, but a question in the queue reminded me of this conversation that we're having with an organization about, you know, how to get people excited about the event itself, knowing that it doesn't offer all of the bells and whistles that in-person experience has, which I thought was a great question. It's something we're trying to work with with this organization on. And one of the ideas that we're talking about is creating like viewing parties. So almost like you would sell a table experience, but instead it's like a Zoom experience. And it could just be part of the registration. But imagine you've got like 5 or 6 of your closest friends. You all decide you're going to participate. You have this Zoom experience ahead of time, sort of like the pre-event cocktail hour type thing, where you're able to engage and get excited and talk about it. And then you switch over, enter the full event experience, and then you revisit that Zoom experience together of like, wow, what did you like about the event? What did you, I don't know, just kind of that conversational thing afterwards. It creates more of an experience that way. We haven't done it yet, so TBD. I can let you know if it ends up getting implemented, if it goes well. But I just thought it was a cool, creative experience that was brainstormed.
One of them that I saw early on, and again, this, everything changes day by day. So now, this probably is not possible at this very moment, but what we've been saying is that it's going to be a slow ramp up back to where we are right in the ballroom. So maybe this happens in July, but this was an event in a studio where they recreated on the stage they had a table and they had the co-chairs on the table, at the table, and they were interacting. And think about your volunteers. Think about, with these big galas and these co-chairs, they've worked all year long, and then this happens, and then they don't get to participate. This was a great way to empower. I mean, these chairs were having a great time, and for their audience, it made sense. People were excited to interact with them. They had the auctioneer, but it was just taking what would be a, multiple 1,000 square foot ballroom and putting it on a 20 by 20 stage. That's and they raised a lot of money and they did it. I think studio, in a studio, I think these are going to work really well. Again, we have to wait a little bit, but the unfortunate good, whatever the news is that might have to happen in July, because we may not be ready to go, but we might be ready to go to small groups again and work our way back up. So the work we're doing today is not going to be for naught. It's going to be beneficial in the end.
And so one of the things that we're seeing here, and it could be translatable to whatever you guys are doing for your fundraising, but a lot of the wineries here are shipping out wines to their customers, and then they organize a virtual tasting with the winemaker or a cooking class with their executive chef. So, some kind of experience where you get something in people's hands and then you invite them to come together while they're enjoying the same thing. And then somebody who's an expert about that that is, you know, sharing and guiding them through the process, whatever it might be. You know, it could be somebody painting a painting. It could be, I don't know, any kind of thing that you're doing, being creative with who your collection of folks are.
The caterer could put together the cooking kits for the chef.
Right?
There you go.
Watch out, Blue Apron.
I would love it if somebody sent food to my house right now. That'd be amazing.
Well, you know, we've, again, what I've got available right now is the stuff that we were doing while people could still have small groups. I hope to have some videos that I can put up on our site or share. But I just encourage you, if you're a GiveSmart client, reach out to GiveSmart. If you're a Givergy client, reach out to Givergy. If you don't look to replace what you have, because figure out how to make it work for what you need. And again, it's not going to be perfect, but you know, we had a couple of groups that went live full production on stage. They had completely different styles. But one was a school, and they took the AV department, and so it didn't cost them anything. You know, the AV people were happy to help, you know, put that together. And they did their auction on stage and their fun and eat on stage, and they had some of the school people doing silly things on stage, because you can do that when you're a school. And it was very engaging, and they broke records. And we're seeing people hit their goals or exceed their goals at this point. I've heard people express concern that maybe people will start tightening their belt. But again, what's the risk? You know,
Right.
The risk is I've got zero and I needed 100,000 to do what I need to do, or maybe I get 50, or maybe I get 80. What's the risk in doing something, in trying? What's the risk?
So true. So with that, I think we're about 20 minutes over, and we did the best we could to get to all of the questions in the box. I know there's a few we didn't get to. We will do our best to reconvene post session today and respond to anything that we weren't able to get to. And again, I will see if we can pull together some tools that we could maybe make available. Thanks again to everybody for joining us. Thank you to all of the panelists. I hope you've all found this helpful. And if there's additional questions that come up, I know anybody on this session would be super happy to chat with you at any time. So take down those emails and phone numbers and reach out. Anybody have anything else you want to add before we wrap up today? Dana, is there anything you need to add before we close?
Yeah, actually, before we hang up, a few notes for everyone. Again, there's everyone's contact information, and a huge thank you to Jodi, Jim, Debbie, Jack, and Hilary for leading the conversation for us. So many great ideas and insights. So, you know, this will all be posted. The webinar will be recorded. We do have some exciting things coming up, so I just wanted to share those with you quickly. Tomorrow we'll host our next ILEA Strong moderated forum, so it will expand on last week's forum, which was about what we can be doing now to be poised and ready for recovery. So tomorrow's conversation will be focused on the future of marketing, given the impacts of COVID-19. It'll be a moderated conversation led by two of our Board of Governors, Lisa Marks and Dustin Westling, CSEP. And Lisa and Dustin will be joined by some subject matter experts in the realm of business and event marketing. Alex Gurarian, ILEA Secretary Treasurer on the International Board and the VP of Events and Experience at Adventures. We'll have Chris Neeland from Calgary, co-founder and CEO of several brand marketing ventures such as Communo, The Cult Gathering, and Cult Ideas, and Kelly Treadway, CEO and lead strategist at Event Curious, and an actively engaged ILEA member. So join the conversation by heading to ILEAHub.com tomorrow and click on the resources page. Again, with all of these, there's no need to pre-register. And then on Friday, Marley, if you can advance, we'll launch our very first session with a new weekly series called Clear Head, Strong Mind. This mindfulness series will aim to bring our community together for a big end of the week exhale. And Angela Braun, PMP, former ILEA Canada chair, and she's a business life coach. She'll be guiding us through conversations with subject matter experts and have some weekly personal challenges and also a system for accountability from week to week. So we care so much about our community, all of you, the event professionals that make up our industry as whole people. We're here to support you. Please join us on Friday. And then again, as Jodi was mentioning, all of this will be posted, regularly updated on ileahub.com. Marley, if you want to just advance one more, the COVID-19 resources page. This is where you go to join all the future webinars. We also encourage you to utilize ILEA community and the open member forum to have the conversations back and forth. I know Debbie's been helping a lot of folks out there. So share your thoughts as well as resources or solutions that are working for you. And if you prefer social media, engage on ILEA Connect Facebook and follow us on Instagram. And then again, final slide. So we are all ILEA strong. Thank you. Huge thanks to our panelists and Jodi and all of you guys for joining. And if you missed part of this or have colleagues or friends who want to listen, again, tune in tomorrow. And everybody, please take care. Have a great day. We really appreciate you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Thanks for having us.
Bye, guys. Thank you, panelists, also for being here.